By way of opening the discussion, I would just like to give maybe a short reflection on something that came to mind when I listened to both your presentations. There is a lot of talk about what we need to do, what needs to change in the system, how the funding needs to change. But this morning we also talked about emergence. Something new is already emerging. Many people are doing things differently. Open science is happening. We're not waiting for the funding agencies. And I think, and I'm now speaking as an educator, part of what explains the change resistance among young people is fear. All they know is that the world that they grew up with and that they have been told is, you know, the most developed possible civilization or lifestyle is about to die or is about even to kill them. So for lack of knowing there is an alternative or embracing an alternative, they hold on to the sinking ship. So I think showing them, as Thomas was saying, that there are alternatives and there is a huge emerging landscape of people who do it differently, but also ancient knowledges. The whole decolonial movement is so hope-inspiring to show that yes, there are other cultures that can thrive within planetary boundaries, and so I would really stress that as a very important message. So I think beyond talking about what needs to happen, we could also look at what already does happen and that we can join forces with by putting it in the focus of academic research and education. And that brings me to a reflection on the fact that we often speak about transdisciplinarity, but it has become like a bit of an umbrella concept. And for many people, we still start from the disciplines as the experts. And then one step further is they start to talk with each other to tackle a complex problem, which I would call interdisciplinary. And then the next step is that we also include people we don't call experts, you know, the people in the field. But I think transdisciplinarity is really a paradigm shift where we let go of this very narrow definition of what knowledge is, as has been excellently described by some of the speakers this morning, and recognize that people who are really embedded in the reality of local contexts have this holistic real-life experience of embedded knowledge, embodied knowledge. I'm talking, you know, with a gender perspective here, that knowledge, that kind of knowledge, is today maybe, you know, at least or maybe more crucial to decide what humanity, you know, what course humanity will take than all the expert knowledges brought together. And maybe even the concept of expert is to be questioned radically. Like if we're saying now, you know, young people from Africa and Latin America and Asia come to European or American universities to hope, you know, for what they still believe is a better life, because, you know, colonial thinking had led them to believe that. And so to say, no, maybe you are the experts in Ubuntu, Pachamama, you know, again, these holistic and ecocentric worldviews. That is, I think, the real tipping point that we are on, and the role of the expert, you know, can be the expertise in a small field, like Thomas was explaining, can be a small piece of the puzzle, but it's not by starting from one piece of the puzzle that you can decide what the whole puzzle will look like. It's by looking at the bigger picture of a globalized society, and then deciding together what contribution each discipline can have. So maybe I would like to ask Mathieu and also Thomas to maybe respond to that, since it's a reflection on your, you know, this this difference between interdisciplinarity or transdisciplinarity as the interface between science and society versus transdisciplinarity as a radical new paradigm for how we control, how we develop and co-create knowledges rather than knowledge, and how that would reflect on what your work in the International Science Council or in the platform that Thomas was describing. So, Mathieu, can I give you first?
Sure. Thank you very much for that, Anne. I fully agree. So I fully agree. In a way, framing the discussion in terms of how do disciplines collaborate is, while it's very important, in a way is a discussion that we've been having for a long time, and that we need to be aware that by and large we've moved away. A lot of people have moved away from that particular academic discussion, and are now looking critically and actively at ways, developing approaches, creative ways to involve people, the people directly affected by the problems we're trying to solve, involve them A, in the definition of the problem, and B, in perhaps even the production of knowledge. And these are efforts that, as International Science Council, we've been actively supporting by testing, piloting different types of research program, even though we're not directly a funder organization, even trying to work with funders to pilot some programs there. Obviously, the creation of a global sustainability research platform such as Future Earth, which puts at the core of its mandate the development of transdisciplinary approaches, was a key. And it was part of the whole movement that led to the creation of the International Science Council about 2 years ago. It was part of that sort of a decade of experience of working more closely together, natural, social sciences, as well as working with people. So that's how we're fully supportive of that.
So maybe
can you hear me? My perspective is that there's been a lot of talk about co-design, co-production of knowledge and so on with other knowledge holders, indigenous people, the general population in all countries, really, local actors, government, business, and so on. But let's not forget that, first of all, from the science angle, there isn't really support for that. There isn't any funding to support intersectorial work. It doesn't exist. We need to find new ways of raising funds for that kind of conversation to take place and be supported. And let's not forget that the decisions about societal change, as Sander said, really, we need not ecological change, but societal change. Very true. And that societal change is not in the hands of experts. Look at what's happening in the United States with the COVID response. You have the president of a very large country calling his chief advisor a fool, or an idiot, I think was the word. I mean, the whole attack on experts, we're not in control of what is happening. Scientists are not in control of what is happening. In fact, we often struggle to get attention from policymakers, and we don't understand their pressures very well either. And rarely do we engage with people at the local level, with local actors, local governments. Of course, there are good examples. There are individual researchers who put these principles into action as part of their research programs, but it's fairly marginal. And the other thing I wanted to say in response to Anne's comment, yes, change typically emerges at the growing tip of a plant, for example. It emerges at the margins, not at the center. So it's often the discarded, the marginalized views that are the innovative ones, by definition. So, yes, how can we support such views? How can we open up to that? And I think it's crisis that opens the center up for new impulses that come from the periphery. And we need to help that by empowering people at the periphery, by giving them a voice, a platform.
If I can just, I'm sorry, if I can just, I would agree with that as well. And to come back to your point, Anne, about fear propelling change, I fully agree with you. At the same time, obviously, fear is not always a good motivation for change, or it can lead to different things. And if fear turns into panic, then obviously we don't know how things will turn out. So I would agree that we do need now to look critically at how we can scale up the experiences, the positive experiences that are being developed in the margin, and try and see how we can bring in more actors into fostering that sort of positive experience. Not only in the sort of the dominant science systems, but obviously as well look critically as how they can be also developed in other parts of the world where, for example, social science capacities are not as developed, but are critically needed.
Okay, I would like to give the word to Fatwa yet.
I want to emphasize the effect of what happened from the pandemic on some of these points. One of it is, I think there was a need for preserving the integrity of the different disciplines and their methods. So integrating or interdisciplinarity and so on shouldn't merge them so that we lose the positive aspects of the knowledge I'd like to see the integrity of science preserved and integrate or collaborate is a better word, science with social science rather than, and this was prominently demonstrated with COVID. People wanted to hear the scientists about what's happening in the pandemic. They want to know what are the symptoms of the disease, what have the research telling them about the vaccines. They wanted scientists, they didn't want social scientists, and they didn't want to merge these. So I would say that collaboration is important while preserving the integrity of these disciplines. And I take that to culture as well because of something that Anne says. Just to say that we don't want the domination of important models doesn't mean that the West has nothing to give. In fact, I think that it's very good for the young people and the youth to come from call it global south or developing world and come to the West and learn the skills. This is very good. We cannot suddenly reject the West and the Western science. This is not, to me, this is not acceptable. I think we have reached a point where we can all collaborate in the pot. The new global dynamic includes West and East, and what was done before is a denial of the subdominant cultures, telling them they have no wisdom. But we want their wisdom, and we want the wisdom of the West because the West took the world to a certain level that the global world needs now. If I can just add one small thing in answer to Tom and others who are talking about funding. I am a social science consultant at the moment at Qatar National Research Fund. And they introduced a new kind of grant. They call them cluster grants, which use exactly that format that we're talking about. Science, social science, and so on. And guess how much they give per grant? $5 million US. Now I'm on a panel to see if these grants are worth that much or not. But there are some parts of the world that we have to really dig into and see where we can, collaborate.
Thank you. Your point is taken. Very interesting. I think what you said about the reaction to the pandemic, I think it relates back to what Mathieu said. If we panic, we will hold on to the trusted models. And it has been compared also with, if you're in a flagration, you do have to, conflagration, like a big fire, you focus on your firefighter technologies, and you also focus on doing fire drills with the people. And it's not the right time to think about how can we do fire prevention or make the world more fireproof. But at the same time, if we only focus on the specialist, high-tech, and interfaces with how can we get the discipline, the expert knowledge, pass it on to the people so that they listen and with the scientists, we're never going to rebuild that world. That is this holistic world that is based on different values and different concepts of what development and well-being means, because part of the conflagrations come from that model. There's the price we pay for that. So maybe if somebody else from can I just ask if other people from we have to close, maybe Carlos or Sander or Gary would like to react, just so everybody gets a chance to speak. Okay, otherwise, Thomas, yours the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond, first of all, Fatwa's comment about the integrity of science in light of the COVID crisis. Very good point, because what the crisis has shown is that scientists do not have all the answers. We do not know it all. We're not in a position to tell people what to do. A lot of the time, what we have are the tools to find out. And with COVID, there was a catch-up. And it's very good for the public to see that scientists were debating, they were researching, they were trying to get on top of this problem on the run. Okay, so science is always true science is always a process. It's always evolving. It's not some kind of fixed canon from which you can draw instructions on how to respond to the sustainability problems, for example. It doesn't work like that. There was a question from the chat about design. How do we design interdisciplinary research projects? And I think Sander said before, it has to be from the beginning. It has to be the framing needs to happen the joint framing or co-design has to happen from the start, and it does take time. There is another step before you can commence the research, and that needs to be considered. So these projects need a longer life, a slightly longer lead time to develop.
Yeah, we just back to this question in the chat from Javier Francisco.
Yeah.
The wording is, how can interdisciplinary research projects shift towards a research design suitable for natural and social sciences? How do we reach political decision makers in the EU and German ministry, etc.? So I think this is a question that needs to be kept in mind for the discussion that will follow. I think this is one of the key issues. I can maybe just say my answer to that. I think that nearly all funding systems on the national level, on the European level and so on the sustainability issues are dominated by the natural sciences and the engineers. And I was working for 12 years on the European Research Council and so on, and I think that I have a quite close perception on the mechanisms, and I tried to put on several projects. And the question was always, if this view is put onto the social sciences or the cultural aspect, you are not fulfilling the criteria of the natural sciences and the engineering sciences. I mean, they are important, but you cannot be excluded because you are not just sharing the key stakeholders in the funding system. My view is very simple. We need other funding systems. We have to get rid of we need to have alternatives to that. Otherwise, we need another couple of decades to have another vision of it. Because these people have contracts for many years and they will not change their mind because we are holding here a conference. we need alternatives. That's my simple view to answer Javier Francisco's question.
Thank you, Benno. I think what you were saying that, we get no funding, or, people who want to do transdisciplinary or even interdisciplinary research get no funding because it does not fulfill the criteria of science. Those criteria of science, this whole normative framework of what normal science is, that is the paradigm. Yeah. So I think it brings us back to the position that maybe we need a paradigm shift. And I would like to give the closing remark to Carlos. Carlos, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And just to react on this point, because I think we will have time to discuss more about that later. Let's not mix, when we talk about the role of natural sciences and what we understand and the paradigm of natural sciences, let's not mix the evolution of natural sciences, which is, and particularly of physics, which in a way is astonishing, because physics has done the work of renewing its own paradigms. Whenever the existing paradigms was showing its limitations, physics has elaborated a new paradigm. And partially the discussions about complexity and complex system science, which Sander illustrated so brilliantly in the previous session, have come also from physics. Let's not mix that with the political interpretation of what means a scientific paradigm means, which is much more limited. And in general, this interpretation is still connected to classical mechanics, and it has, of course, it is almost everywhere, in particular in the way projects are conceived, in the way funding is conceived, etc. But this is not natural science. Let's not blame the natural sciences for what is elsewhere.
Okay, we have to stop here. Time has run out. I remember from Carlos' intervention that natural science is doing paradigm shifts. So if we could have them do a paradigm shift to include quantitative and value-based and social embedded and embodied knowledge to tackle the big problems, we have made a big step forward. And I thank you everybody very much for your contributions. We have not had the chance yet to address all the questions in the YouTube, but we have new sessions after lunch and tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Yes, we will start at 2 o'clock COT. That's in about 1 hour, 3/4 time. So I hope that you will be back, and we continue with a presentation by Hartmut Rosa and then Professor Pinto and some other speakers in the afternoon session, and Martin Leiner in the first afternoon session. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and hope you will be back in the afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.